What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sports Scoop. Today we're going to be doing our second Bust or Boom series episode. We're going to be going over the Washington football team. And I remember last season when we did this, I did it on my phone, moving around into different rooms, different chargers, and we've come so far from that. And the Washington football team have really improved at a rate similar to our channel. So we're going to be going over that in this video. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you haven't, and check out our other videos. We're going to be giving you a breakdown on every team in the National Football League before the season starts. So if you guys want to see it, keep coming to the channel. We'd love to have you guys. New subscribers, always welcome. Without further ado, let's get into it.
All right, guys, so we're doing it by division. Obviously, if you saw our Giants one, we started with key players, and that's how we will start it. The key players on the team with no name, Washington football team. Going to number one, and we're hopping into defense first, Dylan, which I think just shows how dominant this team is on that defensive side of the ball. We're going with Chase Young, their edge, who just was a beast. I think going into this season, we could see this guy jump from, Dylan, I would say a top 15 edge rusher, top 20 edge rusher to a top 5. I think this guy, with the defensive pieces he has on his line, I think what really is to his advantage is that this defensive line was the best in the league, obviously with the 49ers being injured. So you can't really double team players. You can double team 1, 2. So I think Chase Young might be attracting these double teams. And this guy is just amazing. Power, size, speed. This guy has everything, and you don't see that with a lot of edge that an edge has. You usually see an edge with either speed or really good swim move or size, but this guy really does have it all. A scary player, someone I believe he had 7.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, who was dominant last year, especially at the end of the season. And I mean, looking at him next year, I think this guy's going to make a jump. I think he's going to be one of the more dominant guys. I think he'll be the best edge rusher or the best defensive lineman in that division. And I know there's a good one. I'm a Giants fan, and you can just tell, I really am so high on Chase Young. I think this guy, just the Ohio State prospect, what they brought out, obviously Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, these players that are just so talented. And I think you're looking at Chase Young to be one of the most dominant edge rushers of this decade if he can really just pick up next season, and I think he definitely will.
Completely agree with that. I think Chase Young is the best player from that draft class. I think he's the best skilled player in the division. I think defensively, I think in 2-3 years, he will be the best defensive player in the National Football League. And I think at that time, I think this year he's going to jump to a level that rivals maybe Khalil Mack. Mm-hmm. And then the next few years, he's going to be on a level unheard of as an edge rusher in the last couple of years. But we're going to be talking about this year, and I think he is going to be a top 3, top 4 edge rusher in the National Football League. And I don't think it should come to a surprise to anyone, given how he did last year and how they improved their secondary, how they improved just their linebacking core. The whole defense got better, and Chase Young will improve from that.
All right, moving on to our second guy, and this one, me and even Dylan were talking about, is a bit of a questionable, and another second-year player in this young Washington, kind of offense. It's Antonio Gibson, the Memphis running back. Obviously broke out last year, and someone who I will say, to be fair, a lot of people predicted to do very well. He kind of walked into an open backfield in Washington. Obviously, Darius Geis. What happened to him, Dylan? I actually completely forgot. Was it?
He's not in the league anymore.
He was arrested. I forgot. It was something bad, obviously. So he's not in the league. Someone who was really hyped up, and he's gone. So McLaurin. We'll talk about him later. But Gibson walked into an open backfield. I think, Dylan, you can agree with this. You had that 1-2 punch, him and J.D. McKissick. Antonio Gibson was so dominant, especially we really saw him break out in that Thanksgiving performance against the Cowboys. He's just really that modern running back. He has that receiving and that rushing capability all down back, someone who's really shifty, very good at finding gaps. And I think in a Washington offensive line that you obviously improved with, in the draft, you have pieces that I guess can kind of defend, and you've never really talked about the Washington offensive line, be like, all right, they're not good. So I think you're looking at Antonio Gibson to go in immediately, and again, a second-year player. I think he's just going to make a big jump. You see, basically, besides quarterbacks, you see these second-year players make that big jump. Like, I think, we're going to see that from Justin Jefferson. We saw it from DK Metcalf. We're just going to see these second-year players make that huge jump, and I think Antonio Gibson is not an exception. I think he'll follow along perfectly. I just love this player, and I'm a Giants fan, and I really like a lot of these Washington players. I loved Antonio Gibson, not only for fantasy, obviously, but just talent-wise. This guy was someone who was so eye-opening and an electric playmaker. So I think you're looking now at an offense and a backfield that is secure for at least the next 5-6 years. And I think Antonio Gibson will be that workhorse player who will consistently be getting 1,000-yard plus seasons and get a lot of touchdowns, receiving yards. I think he'll just be a dual threat back.
I'm not going to disagree with the fact that you said he's going to be a top running back for years to come, because I do agree. However, this season, I think there is going to be a little bit of a decrease in productivity for him. And it's nothing on him. He didn't get worse. It's just because they brought in Fitzpatrick, who usually will do better throwing the ball. He's not someone like Alex Smith, who's dependent on the running back to get them to a lot of offensive drives. So I think Antonio Gibson, as great of a player as he is, I wouldn't expect him to have a increase in the level that some other second-year running backs will, like Jonathan Taylor or J.K. Dobbins. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. Doesn't mean that McKissick is going to take his spot or anything like that. It just means I think Antonio Gibson, in the current offense that they're going to be running, will not benefit from it as much as the other guys.
All right, let's move on to our next key player, and this probably the most key for this offense, at least. It's Terry McLaurin. If you guys have been watching this channel, you know, another Washington player I love Terry McLaurin. I've been advocating for him being better than DK Metcalf. I think, Dylan, you slightly agree with that as well.
I did at a point.
Yeah.
I did.
Thank God Serge and Charlie aren't on this. If you guys, there are other people on the channel who think DK Metcalf is so much better. But I love Terry McLaurin. I think you look at a guy who just has raw route running capability and hands that are very underrated. I mean, he played incredibly against James Bradbury, Giants corner, and really I don't mean to seem like a fake Giants fan, but this guy, advocating for rivals, but I gotta give respect where it's due, and I think Terry McLaurin deserves that. Going in now to his third year, we saw a huge jump. Second year, we saw him automatically, Dylan, I would say, become a top 15, 17 receiver. Kind of take or give, I would guess, 2 spots depending on where you have it. I would put him in arguably my top 10. Based off last season and based off receivers who haven't played as well, like Julio Jones, injuries. I just can't say enough. I think you go, and Dylan, as you said, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, you're a Dolphins fan. We can't, get past the fact that he's a good thrower of the ball. And I think he will be a good thrower next year as well. And I think Terry McLaurin, who had production with Alex Smith, who we know is a good player, got comeback player of the year, but relies a lot on his supporting cast. I think Fitzpatrick's able to make plays, and I think with Terry McLaurin now, obviously that wide receiver 1, and obviously now with Curtis Samuel, who we'll talk about later, getting downfield and opening gaps, I think Terry McLaurin is bound for a huge year, and I would not be surprised if this guy gets over 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I think this guy's going to have another huge year, and I think we'll see another jump from year 2 to year 3.
I completely agree. I think Terry McLaurin is going to completely benefit from the change in quarterback. However, there is something to be said for the fact, and I'm not saying that he's going to have a decrease in productivity. I think he will be better this season, but there is a chance that his productivity just slightly decreases because of they bring in Curtis Samuel and they bring in Diami Brown. Those are guys that will take away targets for him. However, I think that's a small proportion of the chance that happens. I think Terry McLaurin's a great enough receiver that wherever he is on the field, wherever they are on the field, they're going to be looking at him before anyone else. So yeah. He's a talented route runner, great hands, really good after the catch, really good after contact, and that was a main point in our discussion of him versus DK Metcalf.
He breaks so many tackles.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin, big piece of this offense, and will be for years to come. Great player.
Yeah, and just to tap on that again, I think for me, when I look at bringing in Curtis Samuel and obviously Diami Brown, I see it as a plus, because it's a minus when you bring in good receivers if you're not the wide receiver 1, because then that's taking away targets. But for Terry McLaurin, he's going to be looked at first, as you said, Dylan. So if he's not open, you go through the progressions. Fitzpatrick will either find another receiver or, tight end Logan Thomas. But I think for a wide receiver 1 like Terry McLaurin, I think it just benefits him. I think obviously there's a tiny bit of, because you're not always looking at Terry McLaurin first. So sometimes he may be open and Curtis Samuel will get thrown the ball. But I see it as more of a plus than a negative for a wide receiver 1 like Terry McLaurin. But moving on to another defensive lineman, it just shows. I mean, for the Giants, we literally did defense as one player, I guess you could say. So it just shows how good this defense for Washington is. Or is it a lack of key players on that offense? Who knows, Dylan? But it's not. Monte Sweat, defensive end. Dylan, I want you to talk about it here because I see Monte Sweat as a good player. I personally would not see him as a key player. Why do you think, what's the reasoning for Monte Sweat being that key guy for you?
He's an elite dual threat defensive tackle. He can do it. He can do everything. He's good at blocking passes, good at rushing the passer, good at stopping the run. And what I see from him is he can only improve from what he has, because going into his draft, he was the most raw player on the board. And he fell to 28 when I think he could have been taken in the first 10 picks. And I think going into this year with the improved defensive line, it's only going to get better for him. And I think he's going to make a step up. I think Monte Sweat can maybe be a Pro Bowler, maybe All-Pro, and I think for years to come, he's going to be one of the best defensive tackles, maybe even evolve into an edge rusher and outside linebacker, because he's a very, very good player all over the field.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I'm not going to talk about Monte Sweat. I think he's a good player. Do I think he's a key player? Maybe not. But let's move on to the second segment of this episode. We're looking at key additions. And number one, Dylan, we've basically touched on two of these players out of the three. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, Dolphins quarterback, they got a quarterback. I like Fitzpatrick. Do I think it was the best option? I think it wasn't. But I think it was the smart option because, Dylan, what we talked about and what you have kind of in your summary is they added pieces without spending a lot. You're looking at a draft pick. They would have had to trade up to get one of the top quarterbacks. They're not going to, trade for an Aaron Rodgers, for a Russell Wilson, for a Deshaun Watson. You're going to have to give up at least two of those key players. Probably Chase Young would have to be included in there. And you bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick for, I would say, hopefully we'll start for a year, maybe half year, maybe bring in Heineke, here and there. I think it makes sense. Fitzpatrick can sling the ball. This guy's a good thrower, and for what it's worth at his age, he can kind of run. I think it's a good signing. I think Fitzpatrick is just, we've seen him go into offenses and learn them very fast. He's kind of like Teddy Bridgewater, like that. Like they can go into offenses and learn it within a year, within an offseason, within, OTAs and go out and perform. I loved him on the Dolphins. I think he'll be great. And again, a guy who can, like he did with Tua, kind of mentor Heineke if Heineke is their option or if they bring in someone else. I think it was a good signing. I think what we're going to see from Ryan Fitzpatrick is a role player who's going to get the ball out quick, give it in the running plays, and kind of lead this team. Is he going to be the star player? No. He hasn't been the star player for a team arguably ever in his NFL career, but he's been a role player, and I think he will just do that at Washington like we've seen him do in Miami and all the 15 million other teams he's been on. So I think it was a good bring in. I think they did the right move.
Yeah, it was the right move quarterback-wise. The other options would be trading for a high-caliber player, as you said, and then there's Trubisky and Bridgewater. But I think Fitzpatrick gets over all of those players just because he's a low-risk, incredibly high-reward for the young players on the team. Great mentor, great guy. Loved him for Miami. And sad to see him go, obviously. But for him, I think it works out really well because he's going to be going in, taking maybe his last stand and making his first playoffs, which is crazy as a stat, by the way.
Oh my God! Yeah, wow.
Yeah, this is his time to shine. And if the team does what they can, they could be even going to a championship game, not Super Bowl, NFC Championship. I'm not going to push it that far.
Dylan loves these. Dylan was going from I hate the Washington football team to saying that, like, Dylan, if your last yourself heard you here, I do not think you'd be very happy. You've changed. I think we have to respect it.
I'd be delusional.
Yeah, I think we have to respect it. All right, let's move on to key player number 2, Curtis Samuel. I love this signing. I think this was an incredibly smart signing. Obviously got him from Carolina on a deal that made sense. I wouldn't say a deal that was incredibly expensive. I wouldn't say a deal that stole them. But again, like you said, Dylan, they made the right signings for the right price. They got the right players. And if you look at Curtis Samuel, perfect scheme fit. Open downfield, very good in intermediate routes, someone who can catch and run, very good yak player, will open the field for Terry McLaurin. And not only, we've been talking about Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel's an electric playmaker with the ball, kind of that classic slot outside weapon, and versatile, can play slot, can play outside. And I think for a Washington receiving core, that's what fits them the most. I was really advocating go out and get a big guy like Rashad Bateman in the draft, Terrace Marshall. But then you kind of look at how they'll run this offense with Logan Thomas kind of being more incorporated in the receiving game, getting a smaller guy like Curtis Samuel. And we've seen with Terry McLaurin, he can catch the ball up in the air. Terry McLaurin can be that wide receiver one, even though he's only 6 feet. I think Curtis Samuel was a perfect addition, someone who can even run the ball. I mean, Dylan, we saw that. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in a game, I believe. So if Antonio Gibson isn't playing out, it's
two rushing touchdowns from the running back position.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this guy can do it all. Gadget player, versatile, Swiss Army knife, whatever you want to, whatever label you want to put on him. But Dylan, what do you see out of him?
And that's the word I wanted to say, versatile, because what I wanted to look at him last year when I saw him is I saw a really good player for gadget plays, a really good player for trick plays, but nothing really going for you as a wide receiver. But that last season completely changed my opinion on him, and I think this is a great get by Washington because they don't have to pay too much. They're not going and getting Galladay and ruining McLaurin's bond with the quarterback. They're not going and getting Corey Davis, who they're going to have to pay $1 million. Million's not a lot. $80 million for. They're going and getting the best guy on the board that isn't the most expensive. And it's again, low risk, high reward. And I think Curtis Samuel is the perfect wide receiver to get in free agency if you want to be a win now team. So it makes a lot of sense for me. Just pair him outside, pair him in the middle, and you get a lot of results with him.
Let's move on to last, addition. I think an underrated one, kind of one that went under the radar. William Jackson, the corner they got from Cincinnati. I just think he's a good addition. You lost Ronald Darby to the Broncos, and I think you obviously have Curl now, that really, really good rookie safety. You got him with when they got him 5th, 6th round, who was a ball hawking safety. You obviously have Kendall Fuller, who is good, but is, I would say, kind of at a plateau in his career. We didn't see a ton of production, and for a signing I thought was great for them. Obviously getting him back from the Chiefs. They obviously had him prior to him signing in Kansas City, and you get William Jackson, who's a physical young cornerback who I think was great. If you guys saw our offseason moves, series, I was really high on this guy. I believe I had him re-sign to the Bengals because I liked him so much, and for a Washington team that really, I would guess, now takes pride in their defense. They just add another weapon again, Dylan. And we say they got the right players that fit their system for the right price. I think William Jackson is no exception. I think he'll be a good playmaker, not going into that cornerback 1 role, going into that cornerback 2, outside guy. I think he fits.
Yeah, William Jackson, completely agree. Not going to go too much on him because it's the same thing with him, Curtis Samuel, and Fitzpatrick. They're the best moves you can make without breaking the bank. So not much to say about it. Good player, good depth player if you need. And I think he could end up being the corner 1 for this team. But I think ending up this year, he's going to be more of a slot corner 2.
All right, let's move on now to the NFL draft. We got 3 players here. So, I think they did well. I would say for Washington, they did well in the draft. I'd say, for what it's worth. But pick number 1 was Jamin Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. And it really pained me that they took him because, again, we did so much draft content. And you guys know I love Jamin Davis. And I liked him early. Like, I was taking him in the 1st round, early, before a lot of people had him arguably in 2nd round, and they took him at 19. I believe that was their pick, and to a lot of people that was early. And I think, to be honest, I think for Jamin Davis that's not. I think he's a really, really good playmaker. I think on and off the ball, this guy just plays a linebacker position really well, and we don't see that. Very, very, very good ball skills. Really close to Koromoa, who, talking about him, I think that would have been the right selection because they wanted obviously a ball hawking, I don't know if that's the right word, but a linebacker who can play coverage and get, he's good with the ball and a good tackler. I think Koromoa would have been the better selection. So just in terms of team fit, I guess they kind of had a bit of a miss, but I think Jamin Davis is still really talented. I think out of all these linebackers overall played the linebacker position just so well, but I think Koromoa would have been the better selection. But I think Jamin Davis is still very, very talented, and I will stop saying that. But Dylan, what are the thoughts here with Jamin Davis being selected?
I I agree. I think Tormo would have been the better pick, but
if they were going linebacker, if that,
what's done is done. They have a very, very good player on their hands, and it's his job to make it count. And I think he will do that. He seems like a very, very mature draft product. He seems like he's ready to play in the NFL first season. I think he'll be a very good piece of this defense, just adding on star power. And 3 years from now, who knows, maybe Pro Bowl.
Dylan loves throwing that word around. Wow, who would have thought? With the watch, Dylan, you're surprised me each time. All right, let's move on. Next player, Sam COSMI, tackle, Texas. Dylan, we like the pick. We did the Colts offseason moves, and we had him take COSMI. But our thing was, this guy's a walking injury, 6'7",
injury,
300 plus. Sam COSMI, if he's healthy, is dominant. I mean, size already just reminds you of Mekhi Becton.
Yeah,
Mekhi Becton.
How I used to say it.
Length, strength. I mean, I just think Sam COSMI. I mean, Dylan. I think if he can stay healthy, he'll be dominant. I mean, there's not much else to say there. I don't know what you're laughing.
I don't think he can stay healthy.
You don't, right? Okay.
I mean, obviously he can, but he's getting injured. He's Mekhi Becton if he had a ponytail and went to Texas. So.
Right.
Yeah. And moving on to our last player from our draft segment for the Washington football team, and a pick that shocked me because usually the Washington football team don't do a very good job in the draft. It's Diami Brown.
NFL or in football.
In football, yeah, but Diami Brown and the Washington football team have changed my opinion completely on them. The only thing they gotta do is pick a name. Anyway, Diami Brown. Don't want to get too off topic here. Really, really good addition to their wide receiver core, giving you a solid 3-man receiver core who can all end up being ones at any specific team later in their careers, because they're all young, they're all explosive, they're all able to go up and get the ball, and they're all fast. Like, I feel like this is going to work really well with McLaurin being the one, Diami Brown being the big man, and Curtis Samuel being the gadget or the slot or the running back that they need. He can do anything. And I just think for the way this will fit into their offense, it makes a lot of sense.
All right, Dylan, we're on to the part record predictions. I will start off. I went one more win than you, which ruins now what you're going to say, but I went 11-6. And I am saying that as a Giants fan. I had the Giants go 9-8. I think Washington will outbeat them a little. Giants, please prove me wrong. Washington play terrible. I would love that. I am being an unbiased analyst right now and doing based off what talent I see, and I think that they can get that win. I think Fitzpatrick will be what they need to get them 11 wins. We've seen him get wins with obviously Miami last year, and I think he's going to carry that for him over. 11-6 is what I got.
I'm going to say 10-7, and I'll tell you why. It's because they play the best teams in the NFC this year. And I don't
is in the description. So everything I include is in the description down below. Socials, all that stuff, podcast, all that. So you can go check that down below. We'll see you in the next video. Buster Boom Series Episode 2 is done.